Before we start painting on our objects, let's take a look how to prepare them. If you want to paint, we need to have the UV map, and the UV map depends on the modifiers, especially the ones that change object surface. First up, if we have bevel, we should apply it if it's large. Usually I'm not applying bevel as it is really small and the seams are not really visible, but if you can see any stretching on the test texture, it's better to apply it. Remember that after applying the bevel, you need to correct the seams because they will be on both sides of the edges you marked as seams before. For the mirror modifier, it depends if you want to have mirror texture or not, so it's not necessary to apply it. With a right modifier, we need to think if we want to have different textures on instances. If yes, then we should apply it and unwrap the instances separately. Boolean modifier probably should be applied before texturing, as it has a pretty big impact on the look of the UVs. On the left, there is a cube with the Boolean modifier still in the modifier stack, and on the right, with applied Boolean and unwrapped. You can see the texture size on both of them. On the left, the texture doesn't have the uniform size, and with complex cutting objects, it might be also stretched and distorted. With objects with solidify modifier, it depends. If the object is thick, then we should probably apply it. But if we are texturing something really thin and you won't even see the thickness, then you can leave it, but remember that the other side of your object will be textured exactly as the front, so you need to decide depending on your needs. If you use the displacement modifier, you should apply it too, because it might cause weird stretching of the UVs. In general, every modifier that modifies an object's surface should be technically applied, but some of them, like bevel or solidify, might be left in the modifier stack. With subdivision surface, it's better to apply as you can see how the texture is stretching. The second one is unwrapped and it looks even worse. The third has the subdivision applied and it's unwrapped and we see no distortions at all. Another thing is to apply scale before unwrapping because it might cause a lot of stretching, but we talked about that a few lessons ago. Next, you need to decide if the object's parts should be kept separated or joined together to one mesh. It depends on the modifiers and the software you will use for texturing, so there's no universal answer, but while painting in Blender, I think it's good to leave the parts of the object separate as they can share one material. We can still paint wood, metal, or whatever else on one texture, and we can quickly separate the objects if we need it, so it's really up to you. If you will use some procedural textures that might be used on other objects too, then it might be good to keep the materials separate, like this one on the left. We can easily use them on other objects, but we can't really paint on them. In the middle, you can see object with different materials divided by the type of the material, so wood, glass, metal, but the UVs are still the same. So it doesn't really make sense. I think it might be useful if you have different UVs for these parts and you really want to keep every material separate and use 1K or 2K maps for every separate material. But then for a simple object like this, you would have a few texture sets. You can achieve the same or similar result with just one material and one set of textures, like on the right. That's what I'm usually doing, packing the whole object to one UV and then adjust the texture size and have one material, one set of textures, and less nodes to connect to each other. If your object has a few parts, then it also depends what kind of modifiers they have and if their parameters are the same. If one of the object's parts has the same modifier as the rest but uses different values, then we need to leave it separate too. Here you can see the binoculars. The belt and the buckle doesn't have the mirror modifier, so if we will join them to the rest, it will be a mess. That's why I kept them separate. If you have any curves in your scene, then they should be converted to mesh as they can't be unwrapped in the curve form. Sometimes our object looks dark in the rendered view, and when we will see the UVs, we might see two sets of UVs, but we have only one object. It might be caused by the overlapping vertices, so we can select everything and press M, merge by distance. Of course, not only the whole overlapped mesh might cause problems like that, but even few faces or small area. It's good to check it before unwrapping. I mentioned naming textures properly before, and the same applies to mesh names in the outliner. It makes everything way more convenient if you know what objects you're painting on. Keeping the outliner nice and clean and naming your objects properly might seem unnecessary for painting, but it's way easier to find what you're looking for and work more efficiently. If everything is set, you can unwrap your model and start painting.